You believe your decisions are rational. You weigh options, compare outcomes, calculate risks, and then choose. That is the story your conscious mind tells you, but beneath that story something far older and faster is operating. Before logic begins, before language forms, before you can explain why, your brain has already leaned in a direction. And most of the time, you simply follow it. Neuroscientists have studied this hidden sequence for decades. In controlled experiments, researchers observed brain activity milliseconds before participants reported making a conscious decision. Electrical patterns predicting the choice appeared before the person felt they had chosen. The conscious explanation came after the neural commitment had already begun. This suggests something unsettling. The feeling of deciding may not be the origin of action. It may be the narration of something already set in motion. Your brain is not a courtroom where evidence is presented and judged. It is more like a prediction engine. It constantly anticipates what will happen next based on past patterns. When faced with a choice, it does not start from zero. It pulls from stored experiences, emotional associations, social conditioning, and survival instincts. The option that feels right often feels right because it matches existing neural pathways. Familiarity is interpreted as correctness. Emotion plays a decisive role here. Patients with damage to emotional processing centers of the brain struggle to make even simple decisions. Without emotional weighting, every option appears equally neutral. Logic alone cannot prioritize. Emotion assigns value. It marks one path as safer, more rewarding, less threatening. What you call a rational choice is often an emotional preference supported by reasoning constructed afterward. This is known as post hoc rationalization. After acting, the brain builds a coherent explanation that protects your sense of agency. You believe you bought the product because of quality and research. In reality, the color triggered trust, the brand felt familiar, and the price aligned with your identity. The reasoning is not false, but it is incomplete. It hides the faster process beneath it. There is also cognitive bias shaping every evaluation. Confirmation bias pushes you to favor information that aligns with your existing beliefs. Availability bias makes recent or vivid experiences seem more important. Loss aversion makes potential losses feel heavier than equivalent gains. These biases operate automatically. You do not decide to apply them. They are defaults built into the architecture of thought. Your sense of free will may feel absolute, but it is layered. At the base level, biological impulses influence behavior. Hunger, fatigue, stress hormones, and social belonging needs subtly alter judgment. On top of that sits learned conditioning from family, culture, and education. On top of that sits conscious reasoning. The conscious layer is real, but it is not alone. It negotiates with deeper systems constantly. Time pressure reveals this structure clearly. When forced to decide quickly, people rely more heavily on heuristics, mental shortcuts. Under stress, the brain reduces analytical processing and increases pattern recognition. It searches for something similar from the past and applies it. This saves energy. Evolution favored speed over perfect accuracy. A fast, imperfect decision often ensured survival more reliably than slow perfection. Even your moral judgments are shaped by intuitive reactions before logical evaluation. When presented with ethical dilemmas, emotional centers activate immediately. The reasoning that follows attempts to justify the instinctive response. That is why debates rarely change deeply held positions. Logic is defending intuition, not creating it. There is another layer even more subtle. Your environment primes decisions without your awareness. Music tempo influences how quickly you move. Room lighting affects generosity. The words used in a question shift the response. When a choice is framed as a gain rather than a loss, preferences change, even if the outcome is identical. The structure around the decision guides the decision itself. This does not mean you are powerless. Awareness creates leverage. When you recognize bias, you can slow down. When you understand emotional influence, you can question your first impulse. But slowing down requires effort. The brain prefers efficiency. Deliberation consumes energy. Most daily decisions are automated because conscious analysis for every action would be exhausting. Consider how you choose what to eat. Often the decision happens before you think it through. A craving appears. The mind generates justification afterward. Only when you intentionally interrupt the process do you experience friction. That friction is the conscious layer trying to override an automatic script. Habits operate on the same principle. Repeated behaviors strengthen neural pathways until they require little conscious input. You believe you choose to check your phone, but the cue response cycle is already embedded. A notification appears, your hand moves, the explanation comes later. Identity also constrains decision space. If you see yourself as disciplined, you are more likely to choose behaviors that confirm that identity. If you see yourself as unlucky, ambiguous situations may be interpreted negatively. The brain seeks coherence between self-concept and action. Decisions that threaten identity feel uncomfortable even if they are objectively beneficial. Memory is not a neutral archive either. It is reconstructed each time you recall it. That reconstruction can shift slightly, aligning past events with present beliefs. This means your past decisions may feel more rational in hindsight than they were in the moment. The brain edits memory to maintain narrative continuity. The idea that conscious thought is the sole author of behavior is comforting. It preserves a sense of control, but reality is more layered. You are both the architect and the product of countless unseen influences. Your awareness sits at the surface of a deep cognitive ocean. Understanding this does not eliminate responsibility, it reframes it. Responsibility becomes less about perfect rationality and more about designing environments that support better defaults. If you know stress narrows perspective, you protect your sleep. If you know framing alters judgment, you seek alternative viewpoints. If you know habits automate behavior, you shape cues intentionally. And here is what that looks like in practice. Most people wait for motivation before taking action. They assume the right feeling will arrive and then the right behavior will follow. But the brain does not work that way. Behavior shapes feeling as often as feeling shapes behavior. When you act in alignment with who you want to become before you feel ready, the brain begins to update its model of who you are. Identity follows action, not the other way around. This is why small decisions carry more weight than they appear to. Choosing to read instead of scroll, choosing to walk instead of sit, choosing honesty when a comfortable lie would pass unnoticed. Each of these micro-decisions casts a vote for a version of yourself. The brain counts those votes. Over time, it builds a picture, and that picture becomes the lens through which every future choice is filtered. There's also the matter of the people you surround yourself with. Social mirroring is one of the most powerful and least acknowledged shapers of behavior. Mirror neurons fire when you observe others acting. Repeated exposure to certain attitudes, ambitions, and habits gradually rewires what feels normal to you. You absorb the standards of your environment without realizing it. Choose your environment carelessly and you will find yourself making choices that do not feel entirely like your own. The most powerful decisions are often made before the moment of choice. They are made when you structure your surroundings, define your identity, and choose what information to expose yourself to. By the time a specific decision arrives, much of the outcome has already been prepared. Your brain is not lying to you. It is optimizing for efficiency and coherence. The feeling of authorship is real, but it is collaborative. Logic, emotion, memory, environment, biology, and identity all participate. And perhaps the most important shift is this. Instead of asking, why did I choose that, ask what conditions made that choice feel inevitable. Because when you understand the conditions, you understand the system. And when you understand the system, you begin to move from reacting within it to shaping it.